demo is a medium for young computer enthusiasts to show off the programming, music, and design talent to the world.
The difference between watching a demo and watching an animation is like a difference between watching a play and watching a movie. One's done live, the other's pre-recorded.
Demos are what happens when software pirates and hackers decide to do something productive for a change.
Demos bring out the true coolness of your computer.
I kind of look at a demo as a computer music video, which is created by males, tend to be around high school or early college age. They do it to impress and entertain.
Games technology, a bit better, but done in a kind of non-interactive music video.
Demos use the same technologies as computer games, but there's no interactivity. It's just for a purely artistic purpose.
Demos are a lot of things. They're art, they're a technological subculture, but first and foremost, they are real-time. Hi, I'm Trickster, Hornet. Real-time, oh jeez. Alright, talking about real-time. Real-time, put very simply, is the act of doing something right as you see it, as opposed to something pre-rendered like a cartoon or an animation. Real-time is the difference between thinking it over for a couple of hours and then drawing the picture versus drawing it immediately as you get the stream of consciousness. Toy Story, for example, took between 4 and 90 hours. This is several days per frame, and there are 24 frames in a second, and it took several computers linked in parallel to do them, whereas demos produce graphics of almost the same quality at exactly the same resolution as Toy Story, but they don't take 4 hours or 10 or 90 hours to do each frame. They have 1/60th of a second to generate that frame, and that means calculate it and draw it in computer memory. That's what real-time is. How's that?
There's a few things. I think it's difficult to get across the technical limitations, and it's quite rare for demos to look good, even if you don't consider those limitations. Like, sometimes you have to know about the 64K limit to really get a kick out of it, and that's really hard to get across publicly. So that's kind of stumbling block one, but it's not impossible. Some demos are just cool, even though they're kind of in 4K, you know, I mean, they're just cool. It's easy to get, like, arrogant. You can watch a demo, anyone can watch a demo and go, oh yeah, it's easy. But it's only when you get down and start making it, I forget how much hard work it is and how bloody difficult it is to make a nice looking demo.
It is just a lot of sheer work. It is hundreds of thousands, if sometimes millions, of lines of code, depending on what you're trying to do. And I'm talking about assembler code. I'm not talking about a high-level language like C. I'm talking about down-to-the-metal machine code programming. I mean, we're talking assembler here, where one simple slip-up will not only crash the demo, but probably crash the whole OS. Teenagers join the demo scene now and do what they do because it's a cool click, but where it came from is actually a little surprising. In fact, it's as old as personal computing itself. Demos were originally created by software pirates. Back in the 1980s, of course, there was no shortage of software to go around, and there were no shortage of software pirates willing to spread them. But in order to crack the game, in order to remove the copy protection, you had to not only be technical, but creative. Because copy protection itself is a very creative process. It's not intuitive. You have to get around limitations of hardware in order to make it work. Starting to sound like demos, right? Well, you know, these kids cracked games, and then they met with other kids who did the same thing, and they all got to talking, and they decided to put their skills to a little bit more productive use. Some of them did anyway. Others still cracked games, but they created graphical demonstrations to go on top of those games. Things like a scrolling message or some music in the background, a picture, something, as an introduction to the game so that people knew where it came from. And over time, these introductions to the games just simply got more and more elaborate. And it got to the point where different pirating groups were competing with each other. They had demo sections, they had cracking sections, and they also had demo sections of the group. And these demo sections would try to make better and better demos to compete with each other informally. I mean, these are teenagers. They want to impress their buddies. And eventually the demo stuff just splintered away. By about 89 or 90, demos had absolutely nothing to do with pirating software, and it still is to this day. It's just simply an artistic, technological subculture spun off from software piracy. Demos were born in the 1980s, but they certainly didn't look like the demos of today. You had early demos with effects like, simple effects like star fields, things called copper bars, which were color tricks, raster tricks. You had scrolling messages, of course. You had full screen plasmas, which were, they looked like plasma flowing up and down and dripping off your screen. You did have some occasional 3D. And those were the really impressive ones, because these early machines couldn't do anything 3D at all. They had no 3D chip, they had no math coprocessor, so you couldn't even do floating point math on some of these things. I'm talking about the Atari 8-bit computers like the 400, the 800, I'm talking about the Commodore 64. There were demos for other platforms at that time too, like the Spectrum, even the Apple II and the 2GS. And all these machines had no floating point unit, you know, which are, as any math major will tell you, is required for 3D. They couldn't do fractions. A lot of these machines, the Commodore couldn't even divide. You know, you had to go through a long way of dividing. It had no divide instructions. So getting 3D on these computers is really impressive. It was really a technological feat for the time. Later on, as demos matured, the effects got better, the hardware got a little bit better. Demos moved eventually onto the Amiga, the Atari ST, and the PC platforms. Those probably the latter three, especially the PC being the most powerful. And you could get away with more. You could get away with more detailed 3D. You could get away with multiple effects at one time. You could get away with one effect dissolving into another. And the coding just eventually got really, really good. And then we moved into the era of Windows computers and 3D accelerators and gigahertz machines. And at that point, the coding aspect becomes a lot less important, because the hardware is so fast and does so much for you that there's really not too much you can do in terms of some new groundbreaking effect. A lot of the effects in modern demos are combined effects. They're effects that have previously been done. They're just done better, or they're done faster. Now the focus has shifted to design and ideas, getting one effect or one image to flow into another seamlessly. That's known as demoscene slang as design, and design is almost always considered now the most important part of a demo, along with graphics and music. The ideas now have taken over, so it is still an art form, but it has now shifted from the left brain to the right brain. It is now a right brain art form. So that's much more than I had written down. You want to keep going to groups and stuff?
Yeah.
All right. There are usually three distinct roles. There's the coder, graphic artist, and the musician. The coder obviously has to come up with the most difficult job of coming up with the graphical effects, usually the concept for the demo. They have to assemble the whole thing, and of course they have to optimize their code so that it runs in real time. The graphic artist is responsible for everything you see, including still pictures of the screen, just art for the sake of art. Also, textures used for 3D objects, design elements like how to flow from one scene to the next, and pretty much everything visually. And then of course there's the musician, which composes all the music.
There is no real clear method as to how to make a demo, because it's a very anarchic process sometimes. I'm Skaven of the Future Crew, and I did music for the Future Crew demos.
And I'm Marlo, I did graphics for Future Crew.
And I'm Abus. What we did with Second Reality, we all, first off, our programmers had programmed all these kinds of different routines. They had them in their hard drive, and then we started thinking about putting them together. And we all traveled to Trug of Future Crew's hometown, and he had this little cabin and we all went there, and we just spent a week there coding and doing art and music and sleeping there, and well, it wasn't the best time of my life, but afterwards when I look at it, I think it was quite fun.
With the best demo groups, it's a lot of individual talented people, but there's also a lot of feeling. It's a group of people. It's not just individuals contributing. It's kind of a collaborative process.
An effect's going one way on my screen. I send it off, an artist looks at it, gives me feedback, gives me textures, whatever, and it diverges. It's like kind of like a dialogue, like Photoshop tennis, if you've ever seen that on the web, where you bounce backwards and forwards ideas.
Yeah, so kind of course you need to have some kind of basic idea on what you're doing, but at least in the old days it was more about what the coders did.
Eventually it really was determined by the coders and how it would turn out.
As a coder, I end up with ultimate control, I suppose, but I wouldn't say the demo coder is always king. I mean, it depends on the personalities as well. Sometimes you have a very quiet coder and a very talkative designer or artist, and then maybe the artist is throwing the ideas and the coder is implementing them. Watching your production on a big screen with everyone watching it is just such a huge kick, and it's worth entering just for that.
The first demo competitions were a little modest, but they were certainly very large, about 1,000 people, and they were held in a large public meeting place like a cafeteria, a hall, or a college gymnasium. Now, what happens when you put a lot of hackers in a room? They all set up tables, they get a lot of power outlets, they bring their computers, and they hack. And that's exactly what happened at these demo parties. And the competition aspect eventually just kind of grew out of that. They wanted to see who could come up with better stuff. They wanted to prove it to their friends, and so they came up with actual competitions for like best demo. Later on, things got a little bit more formal because people wanted even bigger gatherings from more people from around the world, so committees were formed to organize these things. And then they got really big.
It's a great feeling to win the competition, and I think that drives people onwards. And when there's competition, the demos keep getting better, and well, it's good for everyone.
I'd be happy to release a demo not at a party or not in a competition if it got round to making it, but they're kind of like the big stick to kind of make you do it. It's a carrot and stick thing. Demo making is really hard work, and if you haven't got some reason to do it, then I guess that's why people don't always release outside of parties. I mean, people whinge about it, they go, oh, everyone just releases at parties, all they want is like pride and glory, but it's just because it's so much more fun at a party and you've got like a reason to do it.
You see the people, you get an immediate response from the audience when they see the demo. Either they applaud or they do not.
When you go to a party and you only do one thing, you get pretty bored. So most demo parties now have separate sections for things like a rave, some of them running 24 hours, a sleeping hall where you can get away from the noise, and trust me, you need to crash after being up straight for about 48 or 72 hours. A gaming area, a huge multiplayer gaming LAN, and various other places too, like Olympic events like throwing discs and hard drives and seeing who could throw the farthest. And finally, an eating area where you can order food and sit down and eat. Well over 30 to 40 parties happened in 2001 alone. I think already that number of parties have happened in 2002, and we're not even done with 2002 yet. Assembly 2002 is about ready to happen, August 1st of this year, and the attendance is already projected to be over 4,000 people.
I think the best years are behind us. I think better years are coming.
I'm glad that I can be part of it now as well, but maybe it was much better in the past, because it was something else.
I'm not dead yet, so I guess the scene has something to look forward to.
We're always living in the best times.
It actually depends on us and on you guys. Just leave your camera and just do the right stuff for the scene. Okay.
Exactly, yeah.
Okay.
Hey, I'm Trickster of Hornet. No. Hey, I'm a dork.
Oh yeah. Get the phone, hold on. Hello?
I don't think we want really a method. Markus on kätsä!
Alright, fine, I'm just doing an interview with Jeremy.
No idea what I'm doing. I don't know where you're going with that, but I'll trust you.
Maybe try it in this direction. The Roots by Sanity.
That's fucking sharp. Yeah, that's got fucking
and the music by Jester, like.
Yeah, Jester.
You know,
Totally. Explain the crowd's reaction to the second reality demo at Assembly 93.
First there was complete silence and then raging apologies.
Apologies or applause?
Otetaan uudestaan.